about opposites. We already talked about opposites a little bit, but when you hear the word opposite in math, what does that mean? So what's the opposite of 3? Negative 3. So you kind of negate it. So negate is a word that basically means put a negative sign in front of it and see what happens. So what's the opposite of negative 7?
7.
Right, because if you put a negative sign in front of negative 7, it's negative 7, which is positive, okay? So every time you have a negative in front of a negative, it cancels, it becomes a positive. So for example, we've got negative 2, which is translated the opposite of the opposite of 2. Well, the opposite of 2 is negative 2, so the opposite of negative 2 is positive 2, okay? You can still chicken scratch this. So when you have negatives next to each other, you can just go bok bok. There's no more negatives, so you're just left with a positive 2, okay? See if you can do this. I know it's difficult. I think you could handle this. What are you going to end up with here?
Negative 2.
Negative 2. So what's the shortcut?
Just counting them.
Yeah, counting them, and there's no more partner with that, so you're left with negative. So what's the shortcut? You're counting them, but the result depends on the result. Can you guys figure it out, Audrey?
If it's an odd number.
Yeah, odd number of negatives, you're left with a negative. Even number of negatives, you're left with a positive. Okay? Now, here's a common mistake. So let me just say this, and this is a deep thought, okay? Negativity is like produces the change. Positivity doesn't. Isn't that's terrible, right? That's terrible. Negative signs really change something, but positive signs don't do anything. So if I had like a negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, negative, negative 3, then what is that gonna be? What are you gonna end up with?
Negative 3.
Negative 3, because you've got 1. Who cares? We don't care about the positives. We do in our heart, but in this situation we don't. The only thing that changes the sign is negative. So negative, 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 negative. There's 5 negatives, so it's just negative 3. Okay? It's a sad truth, but that's how it goes. So this will be a question on one of your tests. If you're multiplying numbers together, if you have an odd number of negatives and an even number of positives, well, it doesn't matter how many positives you have, right? But if you have an odd number of negatives, it's going to be negative. So if you have an even number of negatives and an even number of positives, well, it doesn't matter how many positives you have. It's just the negatives. Does that make sense? Can you guys remember that? Okay. All right. So let's do some operations with these things too. So here's example 1. We've got negative 4 plus negative 2 plus negative 6. Okay, so let's clean that up first. We're going to simplify it, make it simpler, and then we're going to evaluate it. So what's an easier way to say this? 4. What's an easier way to say this? Just the way it is, negative 2, maybe without parentheses. So I'll just put negative 2 there. What's an easier way to say this? 6. All right, now let's let them fight. Who's going to win? What's
Positives.
the positives by what, 8?
Yeah.
Yep, so you got 10 positives and 2 negatives, so you end up with positive 8. Good. So far, so good?
Wait, hold on. This might not work, but I just thought of something. So, could you do it a way where, like, so what if you subtracted, like, 6 minus 4 and say that equals 2, then it would come out to, like, 6 plus 2. I don't know what I'm saying.
Well, you could do 4 minus 2, and then you get a 2, and then 6 plus 2 is 8.
But like, say I forget what they're called, but what are they called? There's like the addend and stuff. Okay, so say the 4.
Addend, right.
So say the 4 and the 6, like, what if you subtracted them and if it equals negative?
I think it's just a coincidence
Okay.
that that's the case, but yeah, I like the way you think. I'm trying to think of another way to do stuff. So that's good. That's good, healthy thinking. All right, let's try another example. Try to make it a little more challenging for you. Negative 3 minus, subtracting. What do we say about subtraction?
Subtraction in math is dumb.
That's right. You don't have to say in math. You can just say subtraction is dumb. Like when you lose money, that's dumb. That's tough. That's a tough thing. But all right. Okay, what do you want to do first? Because this is more confusing than it has to be, especially since there's subtraction in there. What do you want to do first?
The 3?
The what?
The 3 at the beginning.
Yeah, so you can simplify this, negative 3. So here's what we're doing. So remember, there's still an order of operations here. And so when you're dealing with negative signs, that's kind of like multiplying something by -1. So that's more in the multiplication order of operations. So let's deal with that first before we deal with the subtraction and addition, because that always comes last, right? When you do order of operations. So let's do this, negative 3, boom, boom. All right, and then we could probably deal with this, couldn't we? Because that's still inside parentheses too, and that's definitely coming before addition and subtraction. And so now you've dealt with all the stuff inside the parentheses. Now, technically this isn't inside parentheses, but remember negative signs come before addition and subtraction, so let's do this one. So now we've got 3 minus 2 plus 3. All right, well, you could probably do that one in your head, or you could chicken scratch it. Did I do something wrong?
I just did it a different way.
Yeah, you could, there's multiple ways to do it. You could have like chicken scratched this right here, go plus, plus, and then you're left with plus, positive, -2. But see how that could get a little confusing, okay? But do what's inside parentheses first, and then deal with the negative signs if they're negative negatives or multiple things like that. Now what you could do is you could just subtract 3 minus 2 is 1, plus 3 is 4. Or if you're still, I think it's just still easier to just get rid of all that subtraction so there's no confusion. There's always potential confusion when you're dealing with subtraction, especially when there's negative signs. So now you've got 6 and a -2 is still a +4. Okay? So see how we can get there different ways, and that's not always bad. Sometimes it's the wrong way, but whatever's working for you too. Try it if you want to try it a different way. Like Elkin thought, well, what if I tried it this way? Well, try it and see if it works. Check your solutions manual, see if you're getting it right every time, then stick with it if that makes more sense to you, okay? That's the beauty of math, is there's always multiple ways to do things, so you gotta do the way that feels right and goes really well with your learning style, okay? All right. Let's just do one more example and then we'll move on to lesson 8. All right, here's example 3. -4 plus -2 minus -6. So why don't you guys try this on your own and see if, and get an answer, and then we'll compare them together when you're done, okay? So take a minute and try this. Try this on your paper. Don't say it out loud. Don't steal the joy from your fellow classmates. Joy. Are you trying it at home? Are you trying it? guys are doing it in your head. You crazy kids.
Our book is so far away though.
That's legitimate. That's legitimate. Yes, ma'am.
I think I got
Okay, what'd you get?
-2.
Okay, we got a -2. Did we get any other answers besides -2? What'd you get?
-4.
Yeah.
-4. What else? Anything else? Okay. All right, let's see what's happening. So, what did you guys do first? You
Well, I
probably
started
just,
at the beginning, like fully beginning.
and then you just did it all in your head.
Just went right.
Yeah, so you just went
Positive
4,
four,
right?
plus.
-4 is 4. And then plus -2, that's really already simplified. And then what'd you do there? That's kind of,
Put plus sign there and there, plus sign there, and then there was a -6, so -6 minus 2.
okay, so
-6.
yeah, so you can either start over here and go boom, boom, and then it's just -6 or plus -6. So you got a negative, you got the negatives will be a -8, and then you still have that +4, so that you end up with -4. Good. All right, Hope. So I always tell people that it's important to know how to do it right, but it's equally important to know how to do it wrong. So if you made a mistake, chances are some other person in here made that same mistake. So where did you go wrong?
So what happened is I guess I got confused at like the subtraction, so I didn't make it into a plus sign in between the -2 and the 6. So I did 4 plus -2, which would be 2. And then I subtracted 6.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so there's so many opportunities, right, for you guys to mess up. So you got to go slow. You got to be careful, and just try it a couple different ways too. So especially on a test, if you're taking a test, if there's 2 ways to do something, do them both ways.